Every sound unique, trans or gay, I love and respect you every single day. I speak up for what's right and help those when they need. I follow intuition, it's the path that I lead. I nurture my soul, my body and my mind. I am learning to myself, I'll be kind. If I need help, I'll ask, it's a brave thing to do. And if we disagree, I can still have love for you. I'll forever do my best, explore, enjoy, and play. I'll take it step by step, and I'll rest along the way.
Everybody to Emerson Unitarian Church here in beautiful Houston. It's wonderful to see all of you today. My name is Reverend Ed. I'd like to take a minute and welcome everyone unconditionally. The second time. We welcome
loving thoughts, loving words, loving heart on this day.
To have you with us. If you are visiting and you've only been here a couple times, let me give you some advice. And that advice is that you should visit 7 times before you decide if this is the spiritual home for you, because our services vary quite wildly from week to week to week to week. So to get a real feel for the place, it's generally recommended that you come 7 times and enjoy our Sunday morning 7 times. If you are interested in letting us know more about you, or if you are interested in us knowing more about, is that what I said? Us knowing more about you, or you knowing more about us, there is a yellow, however that goes, there's a yellow card. You see people waving the yellow cards. If you would fill that in, we will know more about you, and we will begin to connect you in with the community. So we welcome you today. We also welcome everyone joining us electronically through the internet thingy, which is very wonderful, and we are so happy to have you here. For everyone in the room, we invite you to coffee hour outside in the gathering space after services. For everyone online, there will be a Zoom room that you can go to, and the link to the Zoom room, as I understand it, is in the same email that gave you the link to this room here right now. So welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all of your beautiful shining souls this morning. It is good to be with you. And at this point, I am treading water, waiting for some sort of thumbs up that we're ready. We are ready to go. There we go. And now the video. Thank you, folks.
My name's as quiet or as silently. My name is still Ken McLeod. And my most recent service with the congregation was as co-chair of the minister search committee that brought Reverend Ed to us. And I'll be your worship associate this morning, and you'll hear a lot from me this morning. As we work to create a beloved community, we welcome all who would join us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join us in growing in mind, heart, and spirit. We welcome all who would join us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join our purposes to theirs in a loving spirit of right relationship. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you're welcome here. Each Sunday we read prophetic words from one of our 6 sources. Today's reading is a reading of the full Charter for Compassion. The Charter for Compassion was initiated in 2008 by former Roman Catholic nun Karen Armstrong. The city of Houston was designated a compassionate city in 2013 by Mayor Anise Parker, a designation that was reaffirmed in 2017 by Mayor Sylvester Turner. Later, Mayor Turner presented Compassionate Houston with a proclamation declaring November 12, 2019, the Charter for Compassion 10th Anniversary Day. Here is the Charter in its entirety. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, and to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. It's also necessary in both public and private life to refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain, to act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest, to impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody, and to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies, is a denial of our common humanity. We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately and that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion. We therefore call upon all men and women to restore compassion to the center of morality and religion, to return to the ancient principle that any interpretation of Scripture that breeds violence, hatred, or disdain is illegitimate, to ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information about other traditions, religions, and cultures, to encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity, to cultivate an informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings, even those regarded as enemies. We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world. Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness, compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries. Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential to human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity. It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable to the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community. Reverend Ed, I invite you to light the chalice.
Amen. That is a beautiful piece of work. This morning, as we gather in community, we look within ourselves, we look to each other, and we look to each other and within ourselves for strength, restoration, inspiration, so that as we journey together, we catch the spark of the eternal Spirit, and from that spark this morning, we light our chalice. Lighting the chalice flame symbolizes to all that the spirit of our congregation is strong, and our will to transform ourselves and to transform our world is also strong. We light the flame with gratitude. We light the flame in memory of all who have gone before. We light the flame in honor of all who are here now, and with joy for all who are yet to come. I now invite Ruth to come and light our chalice this morning. And for those of you joining us at home, I invite you to light a candle or a chalice of your own as you see fit. This morning and for the month of September, our chalice reading comes from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew Scriptures. This is the Message translation paraphrase, and I invite you to read it with me. After looking at the way things are on this earth, here's what I've decided is the best way to live. Take care of yourself. Have a good time. Make the most of whatever job you have for as long as God gives you life. And that's about it. That's the human lot. Yes, we should make the most of what God gives, both the bounty and the capacity to enjoy it, accepting what's given and delighting in the work. It's God's gift. God deals out joy in the present and in the now. And now I invite you to stand or stay seated, however you see fit, but help us sing our first hymn. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. It's in the gray hymnal, and it is hymn number 211. 211 in the gray hymnal. This is the time where we have a story for all ages. And where'd the music stand go that was here? Oh, there we go. We hit it. Sorry. I'm like, oh, I'll leave that right there. Oh, yeah, sure I will. So I'm using the music stand because the story's a little bit long today, but it's a real good story. And I'm just going to read to you from a book. And this book was written more than 100 years ago. So by some standards, it's pretty old, but it's not that old. The book was written, it was turned into a movie called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Have you heard of that? Yes. And the book was written by a man who many people claim to be a Unitarian, but I'm sorry, he was a Presbyterian. His name was L. Frank Baum, and what a lot of people don't know is that he wrote a series of 22 books based on the success of this book. This was a big deal back then. This was it was right around 1900, 1920. This was that time period's, what would you say, Hunger Games? Or yeah. Okay. So in this part of the book, the heroine of the story, Dorothy, and her dog Toto, and her friends the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, finally get to meet and talk with the wizard after a long journey to his castle. We have come to claim our promise, O Oz. Now remember, they've already been to see the wizard, and he said, go do this stuff and come back. You remember that part? People forget about that part. They got to the wizard fairly quickly, and the wizard said, no, go do a bunch of stuff and come back. So they went and did a bunch of stuff, and they came back. We're here to claim our prize, O Oz. What promise? Said Oz. You promised to send me back to Kansas when the Wicked Witch was destroyed, said Dorothy. And you promised to give me brains, said the Scarecrow. And you promised to give me a heart, said the Tin Woodman. And you promised to give me courage, said the Cowardly Lion. Is the Wicked Witch really destroyed, said the voice. And Dorothy thought it trembled a little bit. Yes, she answered, I melted her with a bucket of water. And aren't you, she asked. Not a bit of it, my dear. Whoops, sorry. There we go. Dear me, said the voice, how sudden. Come back tomorrow, for I must have time to think it over. You've had plenty of time already, said the Tin Woodman angrily. We shan't wait another day longer, said the Scarecrow. You must keep your promises to us, exclaimed Dorothy. There's the hero, right? The lion thought it might be as well to frighten the wizard, so he gave a large, loud roar, which was so fierce and so dreadful that Toto, the little dog, jumped away from him in alarm and tipped over a screen that stood in the corner. It fell with a crash, and everyone looked that way. And in the next moment, what they saw filled them with wonder. For what they saw, standing in just the spot that the screen had been, was a little old man with a bald head and a wrinkled face, who seemed to be as surprised as they were. The Tin Woodman, raising his axe, rushed toward the little man and cried out, Who are you? I am the great and terrible Oz, said the man in a trembling voice. But don't hit me, please. I'll do anything you want me to do. The friends looked at him in surprise and dismay. I thought Oz was a great giant head, said Dorothy. And I thought Oz was a lovely lady, said the Scarecrow. And I thought Oz was a terrible beast, said the Woodman. And I thought Oz was a ball of fire, explained the Lion. No, you are all wrong, said the little man meekly. I've been making believe. Make believe? Cried Dorothy. Are you not a great wizard? Hush, my dear, he said. Don't say that too loud, or you'll be overheard, and I'll be ruined. I'm supposed to be a great wizard. Aren't you? She asked. Not a bit of it, my dear. I'm just a common man. Oh, you're more than that, said the Scarecrow. You are a humbug. Exactly so, declared the little man, rubbing his hands together as if it pleased him. I am a humbug. Doesn't anyone else know that you're a humbug? Asked Dorothy. Well, no one knows except for you four and myself, replied Oz. I have fooled everyone so long that I thought I should never be found out. It was a great mistake, my ever letting you get into this room. Usually I will not even see my subjects, so they believe I am something terrible. He led the way to a small chamber in the rear of the throne room, and they all followed him. Really? Said the Scarecrow. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for being such a humbug. I am. I certainly am, answered the little man. But it was the only thing I could do. Sit down, please. There are plenty of chairs. I will tell you my story. So they all sat down and listened while he told his tale. I was born in Omaha. No, wow, said Dorothy. That's not very far from Kansas. No, but it's further from here, he said, shaking his head sadly at her. After a time, Oz continued. I tired of what I was doing and I became a balloonist. Doesn't everyone? What is that? Asked Dorothy. A man who goes up in a balloon on circus day so as to draw a crowd of people together to get him to pay to see the circus. Oh, she said. Well, one day I went up in a balloon and the ropes got twisted so that I couldn't come back down again. It went all the way up into the clouds so far that a current of air struck it and carried it many, many miles away. For a day and night I traveled through the air, and in the morning of the second day I woke and I found the balloon floating over a strange and beautiful country. It came down gradually. I was not hurt a bit, but I found myself in the midst of a strange people who, seeing me come from the clouds, thought I was a great wizard. Of course, I let them think I was a great wizard because they were afraid of me and promised to do anything I wished to them. When you came to me, I was willing to promise anything if you would only do away with the other witch. But now that you have done away with the other witch, I'm ashamed to tell you that I cannot keep my promises. Politicians. Can you give me brains? Said the Scarecrow. You don't need them. You're learning something every day. A baby has brains, but it doesn't know much. Experience is the only thing that brings knowledge, and the longer you are here on Earth, the more experience you get. That may be true, said the Scarecrow, but I shall be very unhappy unless you give me brains. The false wizard looked at him carefully. Well, he said with a sigh, I'm not much of a magician, as I said, but if you will come to me tomorrow morning, I will stuff your head with brains. I cannot tell you how to use them, however, you must find that out for yourself. Oh, thank you, cried the Scarecrow. I'll find a way to use them, never fear. But how about my courage? The lion asked anxiously. You have plenty of courage, I'm sure, answered Oz. All you need is confidence in yourself. There's no living thing that is not afraid when it faces danger. The true courage is in facing danger when you are afraid. And that kind of courage you have in plenty. Perhaps I have, but I'm scared just the same, said the lion. I shall be really unhappy unless you give me the sort of courage that makes one forget he is afraid. Very well, I will give you all that sort of courage tomorrow, replied Oz. How about my heart? Asked the Tin Man. Why, as for that, I think you're wrong to want a heart. It makes most people very unhappy. If you only knew it, you were in luck not to have a heart. That is a matter of opinion, said the Tin Man. For my part, I would bear all the unhappiness without a murmur if you would just give me a heart. Very well, answered Oz meekly. Come to me tomorrow and you shall have a heart. I have played wizard for so many years that I may as well continue the part a little longer. And now, said Dorothy, how am I to get back to Kansas? We shall have to think about that, replied the little man. Give me a day or two to think about it, and I'll try to find a way to carry you over the desert. In the meantime, you shall be treated as my guests, and while you live in the palace, my people will wait upon you and obey every wish. There is only one thing that I ask in return, such as it is. You must keep my secret and tell no one that I am a humbug. They agreed to say nothing of all they had learned, and they went back to their rooms in high spirits. Even Dorothy had the hope that the great and terrible humbug, as she called him, would find a way to send her back to Kansas. And if he did, she was willing to forgive him everything. And that is the end of our story. It's a little bit of a long story today, but it's a great story, and it's important, I think, what we're talking about today. So at this point, I invite the children to follow the leader out to the religious educator. They're already gone? Oh, there they go. And I also invite Ken to bring the offertory.
offering each week. But our offering is not for our congregation because our church is supported by the annual pledges of our members. Instead, our offering is to give to others because we know that giving is both a transformative spiritual act and an important way to live our values. 75% of our offering will go to our September Share the Plate recipient, Emerson's own English as a Second Language program. The remaining 25% of our offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, which provides on average 5,000 meals every day to Houston's homebound seniors. There are several ways to give. You can go to our webpage for online giving, put cash or check in our offering baskets at the front and the back, or mail a check to the church.
How can you catch the sun? Can you breathe when you're on the run? Slow down, my darling. Every now and then, come and take my hand. For every little lie you tell so you can hide will grow inside your chest. Your heart will need to rest. So come into my arms.
And now we enter into our quiet time, a time of meditation, a time of prayer, and a time of careful contemplation. Please make yourselves comfortable in a position that helps you feel grounded and centered. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and take a deep breath in as together we enter into a time of meditation followed by silence. Today, I offer you a very brief but profound thought upon which you may focus your thoughts if you prefer during this time. This thought comes from a man we refer to as Sitting Bull. He would have referred to himself as Tatanka Yotanka. He was a Hunkpapa Lakota, and he lived from 1831 to 1890. And in this phrase, when he says his, the word his, he's talking about the Great Spirit. He's talking about God. Each man is good in his sight. It is not necessary for eagles to be crows. We'll now pause and just sit quietly with those thoughts. come back into the room. Invite you back here with us. It is not necessary for eagles to be crows. Amen and blessed be. And now I invite Ken to deliver our second reading.
Our second reading this morning comes from, of all places, the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Surprised as I am. This is Justice Anthony Kennedy, a Reagan appointee, writing the majority opinion in a case called Lawrence v. Texas, or just Lawrence. This is the case that made it illegal for states to regulate private sexual practices in the United States. And to note, this was written 20 years ago and uses some language that we don't really use anymore. So give it some grace on that account. The case does involve two adults who, with full and mutual consent from each other, engaged in sexual practices common to a homosexual lifestyle. The petitioners are entitled to respect for their private lives. The state cannot demean their existence or control their destiny by making their private sexual conduct a crime. Their right to liberty under the Due Process Clause gives them the full right to engage in their conduct without intervention of the government. It is a promise of the Constitution that there is a realm of personal liberty which the government may not enter. The Texas statute furthers no legitimate state interest which can justify its intrusion into the personal and private life of the individual.
Every day seems like the day before, keeping to myself, but wanting so much more. I could be a painter or in the Hall of Fame. I can almost hear them calling out my name. But when people look at me, that's not what they see. If the world only knew what I could do, they would be astounded. If the world only knew what I could do, I would be surrounded. If the world only knew what I could do, maybe I'd be free. If they could see, there's so much more in me. I put up my guard to deal with fear. When things get too hard, then I disappear. I wish that I could tell them and make them understand. Being different wasn't something I had planned. When they look at me, that's not what they see. what I could do. I would be respected if the world only knew what I could do. I would not be rejected if the world only knew what I could do. Then I could be free, and they would see there's so much more to me. I will show them all that everyone is different. I will stand up tall instead of run away. If there were no walls, I'd have nothing standing in my way. There I would be, still only me. If the world only knew what I could do, I would shine in glory. If the world only knew what I could do, I would tell a different story. If the world only knew what I could do, finally they would see I am just what I'm supposed to be.
How wonderful. The sermon this morning revolves around a court case. Court case plays a central role in the sermon this morning. So I know there's some of you who are going to be thinking, why is that a religious experience? How are we talking about a court case in a church? And I'd like to just ask you to, if you can grab your hymnal. Now, every hymnal is different based on when they were dated, but if you start flipping the pages, it's on an unnumbered page. If you start flipping the pages, you will eventually get to a page that says, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, also known as our 7 principles." I can't give you a page number because there's no page number on several of the editions of the hymnals. Everybody there? Okay. I'd like you to go down to the first one is the inherent worth and dignity. I'd like you to go to the second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And I'd like you to skip the next 2 or 3. And then you get down to the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Those are the 2 principles we're talking about today, folks. Okay? So that's how we're grounding this as a religious conversation, not so much. This is not a legal discussion. I am not a lawyer. Believe me, I'm not a lawyer. So, let's get into it. When I first came to Texas, which as many of you know was not a long time ago at all, 2 months, 3 months, I started to poke around to figure things out. And one of the first things I learned about was Lawrence versus Texas. And this sermon is about what I felt while I was learning about Lawrence versus Texas. I'm going to tell the story of what happened, And it's going to be a little bit longer than probably necessary for the purpose of the sermon. But the reason I'm telling you the story today is because Lawrence versus Texas is one of the cases that when the Supreme Court overthrew Roe versus Wade, Clarence Thomas specifically mentioned as next, next, next. Lawrence versus Texas is one of the nexts. So this case that we're talking about is in the crosshairs right now. Okay? And the reason we're doing it today is because the event that led to Lawrence versus Texas was 25 years ago today. This very day, 25 years ago. 20.4 miles that way. Well, wait a minute. That way from here. Before I tell the story, I would like to, I know people, so the thing that I learned reading all the different synopses of the story is that there are a wide range of, let's call them facts, having to do with this story. One official report says they were arrested in Pasadena. One says they were arrested east of Houston. The exact details aren't necessarily important to this story. Just know that it's around here somewhere, possibly in Pasadena. So here's what happened that night 25 years ago today. I'm assuming it wasn't on a Sunday because these three gentlemen were in an apartment drinking to excess. That seems to be, no one's arguing that point. One was named John Geddes Lawrence Jr., who was an older white man. John died about 12 years ago. Another one was named Tyrone Gardner, who was a younger black man who died in 2006. And then there was another gentleman by the name of Robert Eubanks, who was about Geddes' age, and he died way back in 2005. So a lot of these people didn't live too long after this event. Geddes and Eubanks had been roommates years prior. At this point, Eubanks and Gardner were in an on-again, off-again relationship. The four got together, the three plus one other guy got together and helped move furniture, and then they went out for dinner that night after moving all the furniture. They went to Papacitos, and they overindulged. Let's say they were overserved. They went back to Lawrence's place. On this night, Gardner and Geddes are flirting. Oh, did I mention that they're all three gay, right? That's the whole point of the story, sorry. So Gardner and Geddes are flirting, which makes Eubanks angry. So Eubanks says, I'm going to the store. They have a big blowout argument, and Eubanks says, I'm going to the store to get some soda. He goes to the store, but on his way, he calls the police. And he says, there's two crazy men in this apartment wielding guns. So the police do what the police do, and they showed up. 4 of them showed up, sort of broke down the door. Geddes kind of let them in. Lawrence kind of let them in. So 4 show up, and the lead deputy named Joseph Quinn, who, by the way, of everyone in this story, is the only one still alive. As I mentioned, the story varies wildly depending on what was going on and what actually happened. And a lot of this was driven by the strategy of the lawyers, where they didn't want the people telling the story, which is a legal strategy, which we don't need to get into. So they were arrested, not for having guns, not for being drunk. They were arrested for deviant sexual activity between same-sex individuals. At this point, the machine starts whirring. Exactly the test case that the LGBT community needed. And the reason was because the only thing they were arrested for was deviant sexual behavior. If they'd been arrested for something else, it would have confused things. So they were looking in the whole country, activists were looking in the whole country for a case like this, and they'd caught it here in Houston. So one of the things that really caused an issue was that the laws that prevented this behavior were never really pursued except when the behavior was in public. The other thing that prevented this sort of prosecution was the people who get caught for this would often just pay the fine and go back to their lives because they didn't want to be made a spectacle of. They wanted to just quietly just go back to whatever it was they were doing. A lot of people were still in the closet at that time. So the justice of the peace, a guy named Mike Parrott, found them guilty and fined them $141.25, which is what they did. Pay us a little bit of money, shut up and go home, and most people did it. That's what the pattern was. They appealed. Harris County Criminal Court said guilty and fined them $200. So they're out $341.25 for doing what they want to do between themselves at home. The 14th Court of Appeals, a three-bank court of appeals court, found the law that put them, that they were convicted of, unconstitutional. A winner, right? That law is unconstitutional, back you go. Not so fast. The whole appeals court re-looked at the case and reversed the reversal. Back to guilty again. Which brought us to the Supreme Court, which overturned the ban on private intercourse of same-sex activity. So we've come a long way here, right? So that's the history. That's 2003. 2003, finally, this is off the books now. So we've come a long way. Let me give you some idea of how we've come a long way. In 1799, Thomas Jefferson argued in Virginia that to change the penalty to castration rather than death. So in 1799, in this fair country of ours, the penalty for same-sex relations was death. So we've gone from death to $141. So there's some progress there, right? Well, it's true. There is some progress there. Fast forward from 1799 to 1962. In 1962, these laws, it is a felony to engage in this activity in every single state in this country. 1962, not that long ago, right? By 2002, we're down to 14, and most of them are misdemeanors. By 2003, the Supreme Court invalidates those 14 laws. But we still have a long way to go. And where we have a long way to go is 12 states still have the laws on their books. This is what some of the states do when the Supreme Court, as in Roe versus Wade, overturns something. They've kept the laws on their books. So the second the Supreme Court overturns it, boom, their laws are now valid, which is why we have 14 states in the United States where it's illegal to get an abortion. There are 12 states that still have these laws on their books. So if it is ever overturned in the way that dear Clarence Thomas wants it to be, it will immediately, be illegal. Isn't that just dandy? So, you would think, and let me look at one other thing here too. How about the interracial marriage laws? Right? It's the same thing. Do you know the last state to pull interracial marriage off its laws, the last state to reverse the intermarriage prohibition? Do you know when it was? Yeah, it was 2000. Alabama finally got around to it in 2000. South Carolina was 1998. I do know that. So we are dragging and dragging and dragging to do what is right. And as I was learning about this, my mind went to a historical fiction book that I read some time ago that was centered around the Saxons living in Normandy around 1000, around the year 1000. And this was a fictionalized story, but one of the things in the story was that there was physical harm to children and physical harm to women in this story. And the Saxons were actually considered progressive at the time because they had a law that limited the size of this you could use to beat your children, and to beat your wife. That was considered progressive. That was the only law of its kind in the books in Europe in the year 1000. So we have come a long way, haven't we? Things that were just okay, and I'm not talking about legally okay, I'm saying culturally okay. It was culturally okay to do certain things, and then we have changed our minds on those to the point where even talking about some of these things, there is no one alive today, I think, that would say, yeah, we should go back to the days where we could beat people who lived in our house. We should go back to the days where we could say, you two can't get married because you're of different races. Even President Truman said, I don't think interracial marriage is a good idea. I'm not a fan of it, and I don't think we should do it. Another fairly progressive person, our mindsets have changed. We have, in fact, come a long way. What was once okay is now revolting. Sometimes we don't see the progress we've made. So as I was sitting reading about Lawrence versus Texas, reading about these 4 police officers arresting these 2 because of what they thought might have been happening, just seems so foreign to me that it's hard to even imagine a time where that was what we did, much less where that was okay, right? This is back 25 years from today in 1998. If you go back another 20 years, it was not only legally okay, it was socially okay. If you ever watch old television, you'll see the depictions of the LGBT community are not pleasant back in the 70s, even in the serious shows. So I look back at from time to time and see this progress, and I sort of rest on the fact that I get some reassurance from it that at least we're not awful. Right? We have come forward. Lawrence versus Texas made us say, okay, fine, acceptable. It forced Texas to say it. Texas has never yet said, okay, fine, acceptable. It forced Texas to say it. And that is our frame of mind, right? That's our frame of mind. That's the frame of mind that we work at. Dominant culture gets to decide what and who is okay, fine, acceptable. Call it patriarchy, call it white supremacy, call it straight supremacy in this place, fill in the blank, supremacy. The underlying assumption in all of these discussions, all of them, is some people get to decide and some people don't. Fine, okay, acceptable. I'm here to tell you that that is not good enough. It's just not good enough. This faith that we're in, those 2 principles that we just read together, calls us to a higher standard. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Peace, liberty, and justice for all. People say being a Unitarian Universalist is easy. You can believe whatever you want to believe. You can think whatever you want to think. Being a Unitarian Universalism is a lot of work, folks. It's very difficult. Look at the standard we're held to. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Oh, is that all? This is the life we've chosen for ourselves. And what I'm here to ask you to do is don't get sucked into a discussion about whether this or that is right or wrong. Don't get sucked into the discussion about whether interracial marriage is right or wrong. I'm going to quote the Pope here, who said an absolutely amazing thing for a Pope to say when asked about LGBT rights. He said, "Who am I to judge?" Now, the whole Roman Catholic faith went, whoa. But it makes perfect sense to a Unitarian Universalist. Who are you to judge? We are not here to judge each other. We are here to love each other. Nobody died and left you in charge of what is okay for people to do in the privacy of their own homes and what is not. That's it, period. And our faith tells you that, period. Now, you can't violate someone else's rights. You know, there's things you can't do, well, we know this. But in the privacy and in the consent of each other, we are not here to judge you. People are free to consent to relationships. People are free to define the boundaries of that relationship. Laws that block, impede, or stall that freedom are immoral. But even more immoral is the frame of mind that says someone gets to say what's okay and someone doesn't. This frame of mind is like rust on our culture, eating away at our culture and making it ugly and unstable. This faith we share tells us that a passive stance, okay, I guess that's all right, is not good enough. That is why we need to spread the liberating, restorative, and joyful message of Unitarian Universalism. Our world demands it of us by bearing its pain to us. May we, through the strength of this community and through the strength of this faith we share, be able to confront it. May we be able to meet it head on. And it is something that is in need of being met head on. I'm going to go back to the Charter for Compassion, that beautiful piece of literature. If you've never read it, you should read it. I know when I mentioned Ecclesiastes, a lot of you told me you were going to go home and read Ecclesiastes. Go home and read this. Because as you read it, you're going to say, whoa, that's the first principle. Oh, that's the fourth principle. Oh, that's the seventh principle. Oh, it's just framed differently. So here is the quote that stuck out to me from the Charter for Compassion. And it is a powerful quote. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures. Whoa. Compassion impels us. I don't know about you, but I don't like being impelled. But it is true, isn't it? Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures. And get this, listen to this. And to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world. Isn't that what your culture has trained you to do for the past however long you've been alive? Is to put yourself smack dab in the center of your world? This is cultural training that you can't avoid. So, dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put an other there and honor the inviolable sanctity of every human being. My friends, our world demands this of us. It has proven, our world has proven that it won't do it without some urging. And we are those who have been sent to urge. We have, in fact, come a long way, but we also have a long way to go. Amen. And now I welcome you to sing with us our second hymn, a hymn that if you read it after this sermon, I think you will find hopeful. So if you would come and join us, you can stand or you can stay seated. There is More Love somewhere, which is number 5 in your gray hymnal.
We are so grateful for your presence this morning. For those of you who've joined us on YouTube, after the postlude, we'll be ending our live streaming service. Feel free to join us on Zoom for the online social hour. The link to the Zoom room is in your weekly email. Thank you to all online attendees. We look forward to hosting you here soon in our sanctuary. And now, before we extinguish our chalice, we have these limited announcements. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation here in our gathering place just outside the sanctuary. Or if you're online, join us for social time on Zoom. For the past few months, the Long Range Planning Task Force has been hard at work reviewing data, congregational reports, and vendor contracts. Their mission is to create a plan that can keep the church's lights on and our spirits high for years to come. The Long Range Planning Task Force is asking church members and friends to fill out a short and easy survey. I promise you it's short and easy. I did it this week, which you can find on our website homepage under news, or you can find it in your latest e-blast. Lunch Bunch today will be at 12:15 at Cafe Lily, which is south on Bering, and it's open to all Emerson members, visitors, and friends. Are you new to UU? Are you interested in getting to know Emerson? We're interested in getting to know you. Join us next Sunday, September 24th at 12:15 in the library, room 203, for Exploring Emerson and Unitarian Universalism. Light refreshments will be served.
And for those of you who are not new to UU, there are two things going on which I want to point out. You can find in the Wednesday newsletter, Mike Condit will be running a class on the wisdom and prophets of the Hebrew Scriptures. This is a very interesting part of the Christian Scripture, Christian Hebrew Scripture. If you're interested, please look that up. Also, this congregation has been very busy, very internally focused for the past, 8 years or so. So there has not been, from what I am to understand, a huge amount of discussion around the rewrite of the 7 principles. Are you aware that they're rewriting the 7 principles? You are? Okay, good. So it looks like the 7 principles are going away based on. So I invite you not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, I will lead a class on the rewrite of the 7 principles before church. I know that's a lot to ask, before church on Sunday upstairs. So we will talk about the rewrite of the 7 principles. What I don't want to happen is the 7 principles get rewritten and then a whole bunch of you go, what? Who? Well, I didn't know anything about that. I'd like you to know about it before it actually happens. So we will start that discussion here. So we're going to extinguish our chalice. And for our benediction, I wish for you in the course of your week to be able to feel the liberating freedom of this religious path we share. May your gods welcome you. May they challenge you to live up to your own expectations of yourself, wherever and whatever they are. And may the world around you light up so that you may see your way back to clarity and wholeness. Amen. And now our postlude.